No, I'm good. That was a lot. I mean, I'm happy to peel them off. More.
So, what did I do to myself?
Should have just made people line up. So, there's one concern. I mean, I want to ask it because I know that that some people really want to know the answer about this. But there's this push to mainstream the delivery of mental health services in school, and how do you feel about that?
So I think we have to be very careful in the school system because we are not mental health providers. So what I'll tell you, there's an example that has less conversation around it. All of you guys in your schools have had to do school safety plans. And interestingly, the legislature said those school safety plans have to come to the Department of Education. And I'm like, why? Right? Like at 2 o'clock in the morning when there's a crisis or if there's something happens, we have a Homeland Security, Perry Plummer runs it and he does a great job with it. That's the kind of thing that he knows how to deal with. And that's the kind of thing that he needs to stay focused on. I think in education, we need to stay focused on the education and not let ourselves slip into providing some of these other things.
There's a thing that I've talked about in other places, which I think is worth mentioning. I'll use, again, as an analogy. Imagine that we said, okay, we're going to provide people with health care, and, well, it's not worth it to be able to go to the doctor unless you can get to the doctor, so we better give you transportation, maybe a car, as part of your health care coverage. And if you get there, you got to have a place to put your kids, so we better give you daycare as part of your health care coverage. And, if you can't dress yourself very well, that's not going to be good for anybody. You go in there half naked. So we better give you occupational therapy to help you get dressed, probably. And you know what? And if you're hungry, your health isn't going to be that good, so we better give you food as part of your health care coverage. And you laugh and you think, this is nuts. Nobody would ever do this, but this is exactly what we do at school. Exactly. And so there's a reason for that, and that is if I'm a parent and I can get something to be understood as part of school, I get a screaming discount on it, right? 95%. So why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I do that? And so this is, I think, one of the things that we're fighting against. And just to leave you, my favorite idea, quotation, concept of all time is from Confucius, who said that the first step towards wisdom is to call things by the right names. And I think a lot of what we have in politics in general, but especially in school, is we're not using the words correctly. And if we fix the vocabulary problem, and you explode things out so people can go, yeah, that's something I should be paying for, not so much that. You actually, or this is something I want, and not so much that, then you get a lot of progress that is stifled or destroyed simply by lumping it into a thing where you get two people who talk about school or education or kids should get this or we should do this, and they're using the same words, but they're not having a conversation because they mean completely different things by those words. So that's, one of my little missions is to get people just to use the right words. If we just use the right words, words matter.
Okay, so next set of questions is about assessing Learn Everywhere. And how do you get districts to adopt it? Can we use high achieving other countries, which I love that part of the question.
Well, in terms of adopting it, honestly, it's a state program. So again, I'm dealing with, my premise is I have curious learners, not cohorts of kids that I've put into a school system. And so it's adoptable by a student who says, I want to get a high school credit in a certain class. So they can attend that and they can get that credit and they can bring that back into their schools. And these are based on the 306 rules, credits leading to graduation, the minimum standards. So that student then can earn the credits, bring it back into the school and get awarded those credits. I do think that over time, what we'll see is particularly the extended learning opportunities, and sometimes they Learn Everywhere will eventually go away, right? Because once we begin to set up these options outside of the schools and people are taking advantage of those and collecting credits all over the place, to my point, you're going to see a system that was going to shift and say oh, well, why can't we do this? Why can't we send a kid over here if this is where they're doing a really good job with math? Why don't we let them kind of engage the math? If I got the Boys and Girls Club in town and they're running a great theater program and everybody in the community is involved in it, why don't we make that the theater program we're going to have our kids participate in at this point in time? And so eventually, I think then it helps to shift the system, but it already is available to the curious learners.
But can I just ask a critical follow-up to that?
I guess so.
Because my greatest fear, right, is because now they've got to go and apply to the Board of Ed to say, yeah, that counts. Does that metastasize into something that destroys how good those programs are now? Because they're forced to conform under a system that, in my personal opinion, is not performing very well.
Yeah,
Does it drag it down with it?
Clearly a risk associated with it, and an understood risk going in. So we have tried to craft rules that create again, following the charter school model. And I think that the charter school model has worked fairly well in terms of allowing those programs to create flexibility and purpose and not destroy the mission of those charter schools. So if we haven't destroyed the mission of the charter schools, the question is, can I have a program that it doesn't destroy the mission of the program? If it destroys the mission, you're right, then we've lost it.
Thank you.
I mean, I would just ask the question, it's nice, great, I can go, there's a couple questions. So great, I can go to an arts program and I can learn and get credit for art because somebody there knows what art should be and shouldn't be. And they know when I've demonstrated the ability to do art properly, which I think is pretty much an oxymoron. But the second thing is looking beyond this, it's one thing to say, let's get out of this model where there's one provider and one set of credits and move to something more open. But eventually you're going to run back up against this question, which is being in theater necessary to participate as a citizen? Why am I paying for that at all? Regardless of where it happens, whether it's in school or at the boys' clubs, why is this my problem? As a taxpayer, it's not that it's not great, and I want this to happen, but to make that a state responsibility, I think, is...
Yeah, so good secondary question, I think, right?
Yeah.
Those are not either or questions, those are both and questions.
So, yeah, go ahead. I'll wait till the end.
But I don't think either of you answered the assessment question. How do you convince school boards that this is the thing that they should be giving kids credits for to graduate?
So then maybe I misunderstood the question. In other words, the students will be able to bring in the credits and get the credits leading to graduation. In other words, like the state's going to authorize those as high school credits.
I don't think you need to present some of that.
All right. To me, there's a gap there. I don't see who decides that they've
Whose question is it?
achieved. There were a few people who asked it.
Okay.
I also have a follow-up to your answer. In the fact you were talking about defining a word and the disparity between the kids in economic, you're setting that up to go outside, to go somewhere else. Who's going to provide the transportation for that child if the parents are a two-parent household, a one-parent household? I see all sorts of reasons why that would be a difficult thing to do.
So, great question, and I appreciate that you bringing that forward. What I will tell you is that many of these programs are taking place already, right? So the New Hampshire Institute of Art is already offering credits in downtown Manchester to economically disadvantaged kids. They're inviting them in programs. They're offering the programs on a sliding scale so economically disadvantaged kids can get into those classes for free. So they are already accessible to them, and those students can participate in them. Every one of my Boys and Girls Clubs, the 9 Boys and Girls Clubs around the state, are already serving those populations, and the transportation issues are already taking place. All of that's happening today. So why wouldn't we allow those programs to be participants in this, would be the question. Why is it that a student who's doing robotics in the school at 8:30 at night and wants the school open till 10, why is that not counting? So there's none of those artificial barriers that you're talking about. Those don't exist in those programs because we've already solved those. I'm just trying to harness that learning.
But isn't that more for a community that may be a walking community as opposed to where people live far away and have to drive?
When I'm your speaker, but I'm just going to throw out there that when there's school choice and the parents choose a different school, no matter what grade level, they're responsible for the transportation. It's a choice thing. Is everybody going to have access to it? No, but should we, not allow Berkeley to post their videos because deaf kids can't hear them because they don't have subtitles? Like, give access to as many who can get it, right?
So does this revolve all around school choice then?
No, so what this revolves around is a premise of curious learners. So what this is really doing is, so to your point, the system today includes a tremendous amount of inequity. We want to pretend that our system doesn't include inequity, but the results are dramatically telling the story that we are creating inequities in our system. And we want to believe that the system is the great equalizer, when in fact, it's the great divider because of the inherent inequities in the system. What I will tell you is that this system, and I've had conversations with folks at the Christensen's Institute about this as an example. This actually breaks the equity barrier, because today the State Board of Education approves, as an example, a private education institution. Perhaps it's Dairyfield, or it's, what's the other one? Phillips Exeter, right? That costs $40,000 a year to go to that private institution, and it's approved by the State Board of Education. There are many of the people in here probably could not afford $40,000. But if I offer a student a Kumon math program for $145 a month, I've just broken the equity for 99% of the people. I don't disagree that there are 1% that we got to get them across the line too, but why would we prevent equity for 99% of the people while we try to solve the 1%? Let's bring the 99% and then let's join forces and try and figure out how do we make sure that we can bring equity to that last 100%.
Go ahead. Yeah, you got Skip.
Well, Lisa and I serve on the Wilton Mineborough Budget Committee, and one of the things, as an example, is the transportation, and that's one of the things that we're told costs too much, and we can't get past that. I think this is wonderful. We can go back with some ideas, certainly, but as an example, transportation is a big wall in that school system.
It's interesting because some of these other programs as well, what they do is they structure them in the after school, and we've got late buses. So instead of the kid playing baseball, they're doing some other kind of a program, then they hop on the late bus. So why not work within existing structures? We don't have to create additional barriers to the students. We can open it up to them. I will tell you, for example, you're in Wilton, but in Milford, the Milford school system is running late buses to the Boys and Girls Club, right? Because that's where the kids are already going for their after-school program. So again, just trying to capture that.
I mean, Frank and I both love going back to premises. I think that's the key to almost everything, is to go back and say, why am I doing this again? What do I believe, and how mistaken is that? One of the things he's talking about is getting credit. Okay, and credit is an interesting premise, right? So you think about like this swing that people have had towards, well, let's have kids do portfolios. Now imagine that you're Harvard University and 75,000 kids just applied for 2,000 spots. Do you really want to read 75,000 portfolios? No, you do not. What you'd like are some numbers, right? Yeah, got this, graduated from here, got an 800, got a 750, whatever. That's what you want. That's what credit is for. Credit is some way of saying, I don't have to verify that you've done the work because I've got a grade or a piece of paper or something, right? And all that Learn Everywhere, I think, is saying is you can get that in other places. Now, not everybody will. Not everybody will always have all the opportunities that everybody else has, but if you have an opportunity, why would you cut that off, right? So, but it really does come down to credit, which is why are we giving out diplomas? You know, in the world of the future, you learn what you want to learn, and then you're gone, and you won't need a piece of paper that says, okay, you can trust me. Because we're giving those pieces of papers out now, and they're not necessarily meaningful. So it's one thing to say, well, what if that guy goes to this art program and he gets credit, but it wasn't any good? Well, what if the kid goes to this school and he gets credit, and he didn't actually learn anything? So there's always a flip side to that.
I'm going to have to cut it off because we have this room till noon. I think they're not going to kick us out.
Move the clock back.
There you go.
Did they say noon? What?
Yes,
what,
time zone, right.
Thank you.
So thank you again to our speakers. Sorry we didn't get to all the questions. We've got a few minutes. Please take the food in the back if you didn't eat it, because it's got to go somewhere. Thank you so much for coming.
Crop TV.